other housekeeping items?
Only that if you can, please mute your cell phone or your computer unless you have a question, and then that way we don't get any feedback or reverb.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for taking your time to join us. Many of you have been following us, and many of you have been part of this process that we've been undertaking here at SEDA-COG and with the other Clinton, Lycoming, Northumberland, Union counties. This started out several years ago by receiving some small amount of grant funds from Appalachian Regional Commission, in which we did a feasibility analysis and took a look at the various areas throughout those 4 county areas to see what made the most sense in relationship to matching up Appalachian Regional Commission funds that we were planning on going after to obtain to actually do the build out, which we obviously have now in hand. And we wanted to make sure that we put it together a competitive application that would get funded. And part of that needed to be focused on the servicing of small business and mid-sized businesses, as well as an ancillary benefit, we can obviously hook up some houses. As part of the criteria that Appalachian Regional Commission, which I'll refer to as ARC for short, they had a minimum requirement of 100 symmetrical for businesses. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that once we start to actually do the build out and whoever is the successful that gets that doesn't mean that they necessarily have to require that small business to go. But we need to assure that we are building a system that does have 100 symmetrical, so if that business wants that, they can get it. If they want 50, then you sell them 50 or whatever your structure in terms of what you're providing. So we are at this next step of now wanting to put this request for proposal out, and we wanted to give you guys a glimpse of what that looks like, and also maybe hear some input from you before we finalize this RFP. And we will discuss a little bit about our schedule today in terms of how we're going to move forward throughout the next several months to get to the point where we select a or a WISP, and then we can also tell you how we're going to proceed from there in terms of some of the other things that we must accomplish along the way, because these are federal funds. And with the federal funds, we need to obviously satisfy a number of requirements and regulations as it relates to reviews and some other issues that we'll get into as we get further into this presentation. So, as I mentioned, we did receive ARC funds in the tune of $2.5 million. The idea is to basically take those funds and divide them by a quarter for each county. And so what we're basically looking at is that we're going to have a blend of monies where we're going to have a reimbursable grant with the ARC funds, which is just shy of $600,000 that we're going to be pulling out to the successful ISP, and this is per county. And then also we at SEDA-COG have a low interest loan fund that is available to access up to $1 million per county. And that will be a term of 10 years, and it will be 1% and 3%, depending on the source of funds that we take from, and also depending on your credit history as well. And also, we would have a minimum requirement to see that the successful ISP pledges 375,000. Is it, Scott? I'm going my memory.
Yes. 375.
375,000 of either an equity contribution of some sort, or we could also look at maybe assets that you already have control of that is in that targeted area. And then we were essentially looking at then a total build out of close to $2 million in terms of what we know today. And I want to pause there by saying what we know today. Those are funds that we do have in hand or committed. And we are working on another fund source through the state that has a potential of being put on the table. And that will be, hopefully, if we're successful, $1 million per county as well. And that will also be a reimbursable grant. So that is pretty much the thumbnail sketch of what this looks like from a funding source. As I indicated, we have this request for proposal that I hope that you all had an opportunity to kind of peruse it before we got on today. It will be judged in terms of certain criteria as to obviously who you are, what your capacity is, and then also taking into consideration what kind of speeds that you are going to, well, we know that we need to do 100 symmetrical, but what pricing are you going to be able to provide with those speeds? And then other consideration as to, do you have access to an MB or WB, or are you an MB, WB? Are you able to go beyond our targeted area to build out with your own resources? And then so are you going to be able to provide additional dollars above and beyond the 375 minimum requirement? So those are all kind of criteria that we put into the RFP that will be weighted and that will ultimately be considered as we go through the deliberation. We will also be hiring as a third-party independent contractor a engineer who works in this space. We haven't had that. We don't have that person selected yet, but we want them to be involved with assisting us in evaluating the proposals. And then also, once the project is up and running and moving forward, that individual will be, validating certain things as it relates to your speeds and other things to make sure that you are accomplishing what you said you're going to accomplish. The monies that we're rolling out, both the loan side and also the grant side, we will have to be leaning anything that we're financing. We'll be putting UCCs or other liens on the equipment or on the tower or whatever that you are taking the money for and going to expend it. Those liens are our assurance back both to SEDA-COG and the county, as well as to the funding source, that you folks are going to do what you said you're going to do as it relates to the speed and the price structure, and you have the financial strength to continue to operate your operation for a period of 5+ years. So those are all considerations of things that we'll be looking at and doing as we move forward in the process. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to turn it over to Scott for continuing with this conversation. I would say that if as we kind of ramble through this, if you have any questions, let us know. We'll stop and we'll ask those, address those questions. Then we don't need to wait till the very end. I'm really into interactive process here, so why don't you take over and continue with the presentation, please?
Thanks, Mike. I'm going to jump into the project timeline now. That was also included in, I believe, the email that was sent out. But if you haven't been able to see it, I'm just going to briefly go over it. Basically, we were awarded the contract by ARC in September. We did our county meetings as far as going out and updating the counties of the project in November and some in December. Right now, we're conducting our this is the ISP pre-RFP meeting. After this meeting, we're going to take any comments, suggestions we get from this meeting and review the current RFP and make adjustments if needed. We'll be bringing that back to the counties for final approval. We're hoping to have that RFP out on the street by the end of the year, with the deadline for getting those back and reviewing them in February. We're going to meet with the counties between February and March to select our preliminary ISPs for the project areas. Once we have that approval, hopefully sometime in March, we're going to be requesting, as Mike stated before, we're going to be requesting a further detailed scope of work from the winning ISP so that we can go out and establish with that third-party vendor, is this something that is doable? We're also going to need that additional information for any environmental reviews that SEDA-COG will have to do for construction. So between March and April, that's what we'll be doing. Between April and July, SEDA-COG will be conducting that environmental review, as well as starting the loan application process for the winning ISP. Once that, we're looking at least 3 or 4 months for that process, with the ISP being awarded in August. Issue a notice to proceed in August as well. Depending on, I know there's a very aggressive timeline. We're hoping to have the project completed by the end of December of 2021 and close out sometime in January, February of 2022. Oh, I have a question. 1 second. Go ahead, Matt. What's your question?
Just for clarification here. So are you saying that you would give the issue the notice to proceed in August and then want 14 miles of fiber built by December? Because that seems like
depends on what is being proposed. Depends on what's being proposed by the ISP. Again, this is a tentative timeline. We can adjust if needed.
Okay, yeah, I mean, just from my experience, regardless of whatever, sometimes make-readies, going out to the power company to put anything on the poles, it's taking 60 and 90 days. So I'm not sure that that's a practical timeline just from, what we see in the real world, just as feedback here.
Part of this timeline was influenced by the contract that we have with ARC. And the ARC contract, it goes to December of 2021. With that said, I feel absolutely confident that if we show that we are having progress moving forward, which we are right now, I think we can go back to ARC and get that contract extended. So based upon what we're going to see coming back from you guys in your RFPs, and because that's one of the things that we're drilling down, is you tell us what your schedule is. And if we're seeing everybody saying there's no way we can make this, then that's going to be my ability to go back to ARC and renegotiate the contract extension, which we do that on a fairly regular basis. I don't think that this is going to be a deal killer, but I had to have some basis to do that. And right now, today, you're giving me part of that, but I'd like to hear more of that as we progress forward.
Thanks, Matt. So that's the timeline in a nutshell. I'd like to get into the RFP itself. Everyone should have had a copy. I'm not going to go through the entire RFP because they're pretty standard. It's a standard RFP. What I will go over is kind of the meat and potatoes of it, the scope, selection criteria, scoring, that kind of thing. And if anybody has any questions, again, please use the raise hand button and we'll address the questions there. So the project scope, we're looking at equipment, lease payments, land, lease of land, vertical assets, all are eligible for the funding that is being made available. Any construction in those that need to be done for the project, if there's construction that does invoke the Davis-Bacon federal wage rates, and we are then subject to environmental reviews. And SEDA-COG will be doing those environmental reviews.
Scott,
The ISP,
in respect to the wage rate issue, what we're going to try to do between now and the time that we actually formally put this out is that we're going to try to attach a wage rate for each county, so you have an appreciation of what that value is, so that you can price your project accordingly. The only caveat is that they're subject to change, and so we would have to do another wage rate like so many days out before we issue the notice to proceed, and then we can lock that wage rate in. But it won't be a drastic change if it changes at all. I just wanted to let you know that what we're going to give you is a sample, if you will, to give you somewhat of an idea of what those rates look like.
Going on to number 2, the ISPs will be responsible for any kind of structural or engineering costs that may be associated with the project, and that is, you know, if they're going to be using a tower or whatnot, you guys are going to be responsible for that cost. The minimum speed for businesses is 100 symmetrical, that's 100 up and down, and for residential, that's 50/10. As Mike stated before, that is not mandatory that the customers or businesses utilize those speeds. They can actually, they don't have to get the Cadillac plan, they can get the Volkswagen Golf plan if they want. So 100% of the targeted businesses in each of the area, and I'll show you a list of the different businesses we have in those project areas, will need that access. And we're looking at least 95% of the residents within the project area. As Mike stated before as well, we will look at extra points toward ISPs who can demonstrate speeds greater than 100 symmetrical for businesses and greater than 50/10 for residents, and actually delivering service outside the project area as well. Again, ISPs are expected to obtain the local permitting and approvals for the project. As Mike also stated, SEDA-COG will be taking out a lien position on equipment that was purchased utilizing the funding. And that's for, right now, I think looks like a 5-year minimum lease, or I'm sorry, lien. Competitive proposals will include ISPs who commit private sector and other investments above the $375,000 limit. So there is a minimum of $375,000 commitment, but you'll be more competitive if you are able to show that you are investing more to the project. All right, moving forward. The project areas in Clinton County, we have sections of East Loganton and the Bucktail Medical Center in Renovo. That's comprising of probably 6.8 square miles, 7 businesses, and roughly 350 to 360 households. Lycoming County, I'm going to go through these, then I'm going to actually pull them up on the map so you guys can visualize them. So Lycoming County, we have sections of Moreland Township, 6.5 mile area, 5 businesses, and roughly 180 to 190 households. Union County, we're looking at the Mazeppa and Kelly Township area, 7.6 mile squares, and 5 businesses, and roughly over 700 businesses, or I'm sorry, over 700 households. Northumberland County, we have the Route 147 area south of Sunbury, which goes down to Fisher's Ferry. Some of Upper and Lower Augusta is included in there. 7 businesses in that area with roughly 240 households. So I'm going to jump out to Google Earth here, and we'll kind of look at the area.
Scott, can I ask you a question about Clinton County quick?
Yes.
what is the why does Bucktail keep coming back up here? Because they have the ability to get gigabit fiber right now, and we've even reached out to them at times, but they've never wanted it. So I'm just trying to figure out what is it that they're looking for. What are we trying to accomplish with that? Because they literally have a fiber line like a quarter of a mile from their building, and they can get gigabit right now.
Good question, Matt. In fact, the last time we spoke with Bucktail, they were looking at getting, they were looking for it. So I'm not sure when you spoke with them. We can definitely circle back with them and find out what's going on.
Okay, but yeah, I guess my concern with that is Verizon's the phone company up there, I think. TDS is the phone company in Loganton. So you have no overlap with the the CLEC or the ILEC. Comcast may be in Loganton. I guess my concern is I don't know that you're going to get somebody to bid on Clinton County when you've got that little island of the Bucktail Medical Center up there, especially when, like I said, I know for a fact they can get gigabit fiber today.
Well, we did have discussions on whether or not we split Clinton County up into two separate proposals. So
okay.
That would, we're still looking at that, Matt. So it's not a definite right now. Well, like Matt
Scott,
said, there's.
This is Kristen from Comcast. If you wanted me to weigh in on that, I don't know, Matt, if you thought Comcast was near Bucktail or if there's someone else up there, but our fiber is a little bit of a distance from there. I know it required, a $30,000 to $40,000 cost for construction. Was it Comcast that you were thinking was closer?
Well, so we have an NNI with you guys. So we had looked at jumping onto the Comcast fiber to get up to them. But I mean, the build to get to Bucktail was not ridiculous. Like when we priced it out, the fiber comes somewhere, I don't know, somewhere past the fire hall there. Like it wasn't a crazy build to get to them. That's why, like, maybe it's not there now, but it could be there really relatively inexpensively if they.
Yeah, my understanding was at the time we spoke to them, they weren't willing to pay, that $20,000 to $30,000 cost. But I don't want to get bogged down in the details. I just wanted to clarify in case, you were considering changing the project areas. I think maybe we could have a further discussion there. Thanks.
That's what, from a strategic standpoint, I see this as being a unique situation where the ISPs and the WISP are better to do this than us trying to figure out how to do it. So we're going to be the financial incentive, and we're going to also obviously have some controls because of the federal dollars that are flowing to this. But you guys are in a better position to figure this stuff out, and you should be having conversations with Bucktail. We did, and at the time when we put everything kind of together, Bucktail convinced us that they were not properly connected to things that they wanted to do there in their business. So I guess that would be part of your due diligence again, as you begin to price this out and scope this out, is you may be having a conversation with the appropriate people at Bucktail and move things forward. But ultimately, we would like to see them served, whether it's through this grant or you guys do it on your own. So, a lot of what we've been doing here has spawned a lot of conversations, and people have been out there obviously doing business on their own to expand internet on a daily basis. So we want to try to support you as much as you can, but you guys need to make your own business decisions and move forward with your own strategies, and then present them to us, and we'll rate them and take a look at them.
Mike and Scott, this is Jeannie Shearer with Windstream, and I think I had an answer on this before. There's not a challenge process written into your RFP process, correct? So there isn't an opportunity through the process itself to say we're already serving this area?
Well, if you're serving the area and hitting these speeds, then I think we need to kind of pause for a moment and figure what that means, because we don't want to be overbuilding existing assets that are out there. We've gotten to this point at this time based upon our analysis of the research and information that's out there, and also knocking on doors. Most of these businesses that we are proposing that we need to touch, we had conversations with them a year ago, would you say, Scott?
Yeah, it was the fall of last year when we were driving all over the place. Or was it the spring of this year? I don't know. The 2020 is a big blur to me, Mike.
Yeah, it is.
If SEDA-COG's willing to provide shape files or KMZs, we can easily, cross-reference our files and tell you where we are served. Because your experience that you're talking about with, I don't know what you said, Bucknell or I'm sorry, Bill or whatever.
Bucktail.
Yeah, Windstream serves the entirety of Union County, and so I do anticipate that there likely will be some areas that are already served. So we welcome that opportunity to review those files and get back to you.
Okay. Any other questions regarding that? Okay. Just briefly, just going into the different areas, we have the Loganton area of Clayton County. This little corridor here between both exits of 80. The Lycoming County, the Moreland Township area. The Route 147 corridor below Sunbury in Northumberland County, and the Mazeppa and Kelly Township areas within Union County. These are our project areas. And we'll be looking for input from you guys as to once we finalize this, as to where we're at with that. So I'm going to jump back to the PowerPoint here real quick. So the scoring and selection process. Can everyone see that?
No.
Oh,
No.
hold on a second. My bad. I apologize. 1 second.
It's up now, Scott.
The stupid control thing for the video or is right over top of the menu here that I need to get to. There we go. Okay, sorry about that.
Scott, do you mind, this is Kristen again, I'm sorry, do you mind if I ask a quick question? Is this presentation going to be available somewhere after the call, or is it on your website? I didn't see it. I saw a reference in the invite to an agenda,
Yeah.
but
Yes, basically we're actually recording the meeting.
Okay.
So this will be available. I can actually make the slides available if you would like. But the whole meeting will be recorded, and we'll probably be most likely posting it up on our website where the public notice for this meeting was held.
okay, thank you.
So these are the basic scoring selection process that we're looking at. This is pretty standard stuff. I think the total points that is going to be 120 that you could achieve. During the selection process, we're going to be basing on the criteria listed here. SEDA-COG will then enter into negotiations with the provider and finalize loan application material. So should the selected provider fail to reach an agreement or not pass the loan application process, we'll go to the next provider and that was scored on the list, and so on and so forth. Included with the RFP, we have these estimate forms. It's on the last 5 pages of the RFP. We're requesting that for each of the project areas that you are bidding on, that you kind of do a quick fill out this form for us. It's kind of like a snapshot of your proposal. And listed there is the number of customers to be served, speed, ISP investment, what your consumer pricing is going to be, and whether or not it's outside the project area, and the estimated number of households outside the area. So that's the RFP in a nutshell. Everyone should have had a copy of it. It is, like I said, it's a draft, so it's by no means the final version. Does anybody have any questions? Anything you want to bring up at this time?
Hi, Scott. Paul Gibbons with Center WISP with a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I agree with the other speaker that the timeline between award in August and full deployment in December is very aggressive. It's not only the make-ready use on phone poles as one example of a deployable technology, but the actual build out of that number of miles and then connecting up to home. So that's just some feedback, I guess, on that rather than a question. But a couple of questions also. You mentioned an independent contracting organization that would be involved with the proposal and actually involved with the work conduct. Once the proposal is in, can you talk a little bit more about the review and award process? Like, it sounds like the contractor, along with the counties and SEDA-COG management, will be making the picks for the vendor. Is there a go back then for more detail? Did you mention that? And is that a go, no go by the independent contractor, or more of flushing out over time to get to the level of detail that's required? What exactly role do they play in the award, and whether or not it's a move forward or not with the chosen vendor based on the proposal itself?
Good question. I think that would depend entirely on what our third-party vendor is looking at as far as the ISP's proposal. So if there's some blatant or really popping out question as regard to being able to complete the project in the proposal, we may have to go back to the awarded ISP and for clarification. I would assume that we would do that on any kind of question that would come up during the evaluation process. So that's one point. As far as actual determining the awardee, I might correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see that as our third-party vendors' responsibility. I think they're just there to verify and review what is being proposed and if it's a feasible proposal.
Yeah, and ultimately the decision is going to come down to the county commissioners or who they designate within their county, and also SEDA-COG. So it will be a collaborative effort. We've actually done one of these already at a much smaller scale in Juniata, Mifflin, and Perry. And essentially what it looked like is the SEDA-COG pretty much sat there independently and did their weighting criteria, and then the commissioners did the same. And then we sat down and we compared our notes with each other to see if there was a general consensus as to who seemed to rise to the top. Very similar dynamics this time, except for because of the complexity of this, we felt that we needed to bring in somebody that has a little bit more knowledge than what we do to be able to look at it from the techie side of perspective, so that we have that expertise at the table to provide us with some guidance. We may not see something there that might be of some concern, or that individual hopefully will, and that will be then an opportunity for us to maybe dig a little bit further and get a more clear answer from the proposer. And just, I think it's self-obvious, but I want to make it really crystal clear that although we have 4 counties at the table, all those 4 counties are not going to weigh in on the project that's happening in Northumberland County. It will just be Northumberland County commissioners that will be judging their project within Northumberland County. The same is true with Clinton County. Clinton County will be looking at their project independently. So this is not a big, huge 4 county, 1 contract build out. It's 4 different types of projects going on in each of the respective counties.
Good question, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
Scott, is it a requirement to take a loan from SEDA-COG for this project, or is that an option?
Matt, it's an option, but if you say to us, we don't need it, we have to show at the end of the day that that extra $1 million came from someplace. So if you say, I can self-fund this, then put that in your proposal and we will judge that. We needed to match the ARC funds. That's
okay. So that money has to come from somewhere, whether it's a loan from you guys or a self-funding amount.
correct.
Right. And Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, the amount that would have to be matched for a particular county would be just under $600,000. Is that correct?
No, we had to have that $1 million match in there because that's what we were awarded. We got extra
Okay.
points.
I didn't know if we could split it per county.
I mean, I guess my question would be, though, at that point, what is this project getting me? Because for $1 million, for less than $1 million, I could build most of, the requested areas. So what value is this bringing to the table? If I have to take out a loan for $1 million in order to get the grant funding, because $1 million will go a long way building 7 miles of fiber or 14 miles of fiber. So I'm having a little bit of a difficulty justifying in my head, I don't know how this would go. And I haven't sat down and thought about it totally out, but I don't know. That's my question, I guess.
So Matt, obviously the 625 or whatever that number is, 567,000 is a grant to you, no payback unless there's a screw up, which we don't anticipate any screw ups. And then also there's a potential cherry hanging out there, and that's another $1 million that we might be able to get as state funds. So that is an opportunity there for you to maybe expand beyond the targeted area if it makes sense from a business standpoint. And so that's the incentive, those grants. If you don't have access to capital yourself, then there's a low interest loan that you couldn't go to the bank and borrow that type of money for that interest rate.
Right. I guess my question and my thought process though is, you know, if it's going to cost, say, $1 million to build the project, I'm having trouble justifying taking out the loan, because then where do we get in other words, if I take out $1 million in a loan, I don't need the grant to complete the project. So at that point, it becomes a loan project, and maybe the low interest loan is a benefit, but I can get a loan in a bank if that's what I wanted to do, as opposed to a grant to build out to service a rural area that otherwise may not make cost-effective sense to do so.
Well, I think what you're telling us potentially here is that our targeted area, you can make that happen for less than $1.5 million or 2 million.
Correct. I mean, even where you're saying 14 miles of fiber, you know, it doesn't cost $1 million to build 14 miles of fiber. So, yeah, I guess I'm questioning some of the numbers here, whether at the end of the day this is really going to just be a low interest loan project, or if it's going to be a forgivable grant. Because I can't talk to other businesses and how they would do it, but even if we were to build out fiber for 14 miles, it's not going to cost us $1 million to do that.
Well, Matt, you could also use those additional funds to go outside the project area, which would also bring you up higher in the selection process.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I'm just saying that's something that needs to be gone back and looked at to see the ROI and the business plan, and and figure that out, because now there's $1 million that we have to either put up or take out a loan on to build into very rural areas. As opposed to like the RDOF funding, which is basically purely a grant to build out. So because some of these areas aren't built out into because it's very hard to justify the ROI. And that doesn't negate people needing broadband there. But, it may be very hard to justify building a network when I have to go get the $1 million to do it versus, having some kind of a grant fund to produce the network into that area.
Scott and Mike, this is Bill Newborg. I'm with Atlantic Broadband. I noticed on your 4 areas, you're using square miles versus linear. So could that be where some of the confusion is? I mean, I've heard the 14 miles. I apologize, I haven't gotten through the RFP yet. But in the wired world, obviously it's linear footage, and to pick up all those areas, just looking at the maps, it might be significantly more than 14 miles. And having done a lot in rural areas, they're difficult. So I don't know if I'm helping here or confusing it. I'm a little bit confused, but that's what struck me on the maps we were looking at, or the information you provide on 4 counties. It was square miles with counts versus what it's going to take to get a network built.
Okay, and you know what? I missed that. If it was square miles, I thought somebody had figured it would be 14 miles of just a direct, run or a few laterals or something like that. So okay, that
the original. I think it's in the original, or the draft RFP actually mentions linear miles for each of the project areas. I did not put that in the presentation because we wanted the project to be technology agnostic. So if someone can come and present us a wireless solution that does the same exact thing, that's fine. But when we estimated the cost for the project, we went with fiber because at the time fiber was the only way you could get the 100 symmetrical speeds. And with when we did our estimates, we estimated high because, you know, you always want to come in a little higher and make sure that you have your assets or yourself covered when you come to price. So that's where those estimates came in. Like I said, if there is a solution to do the exact same thing as far as the speed criteria and the project area, we're more than happy to entertain that as well. It doesn't have to be fiber. It doesn't need to. Or it could be a hybrid. It could be a combination of both.
This is Tim here from Upward Broadband. I have kind of a follow-up question just to make sure I'm understanding the budget. Am I understanding right that the minimum cost of a county project would be just shy of $2 million? So you add up the $1 million loan, the $567,920 in grant, and the $375 of investment from the ISP. Am I right that that would be the minimum project cost per county?
Correct.
That is correct. And that's not including the additional funding of $1 million that hasn't been approved yet. So we're still working on that. There could be an additional $1 million per county.
And obviously you would expect expanding the target area if that would be the case.
Okay, so if that's awarded from the state, then the minimum project costs would increase by $1 million
Per county,
Right.
yeah.
Right, and we also have we adjusted our project maps. I think it's probably close to 30% average increase in the project area if we do get that additional $1 million. I didn't include it. I didn't want to confuse the issue with those additional maps, but there will be a project area increase if we do get those additional funds.
But
And are you
my
anticipating?
comment that I made earlier, at the end of the day, you guys are going to drive this. I mean, to Matt's issue and to other issues, I mean, you're going to come up with, from your business plan and perspective, what you think is the best way to build this out, the most cost-effective way based upon the monies that we have on the table. And if you're able to expand the targeted area, then that's even better. That will help you and that will help everybody else. So we don't want to have too many artificial constraints here. You know that you have basically about a little under 2 million. If we're successful in getting that other monies, then we're at 3 million. You know, we're basically where the targeted area is. We need to make sure that we touch those businesses that we have identified. And you know, who you hook up beyond that is really your business plan, how you decide what is best for your business. And also, obviously, I know you're all in this business also to expand broadband. That's what you're doing. So you're going to have some great deal of control here on this process.
Understood. And do you expect clarity on that $1 million from the state before you issue the RFP, or may that still be a question mark after the RFP has been issued?
I would like to think, and this is a guesstimate on my part, I'd like to think that we will not have clarity on that when we release it out in the street to you guys, but I'd like to think that maybe we'll get a warm, fuzzy feeling, or no, you're not going to get this by the time you have to submit it back to us. But we will, it is our intention to continue to communicate to the folks who are interested in putting this proposal together. If things are changing, we'll let you know what those changes are.
Okay, thank you.
And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we did the pilot in the other 3 counties, we had a similar situation, and I don't think we had that answer of that second pot of money that we got until after they submitted it. And they submitted it as if it would be there. They gave us 2 scenarios, did they not? One without it and one with it? So
Correct, yes. When we did that, yeah, when we did that project, we had in our form that we requested, our evaluation form, we actually had 2 scenarios, that one with the funding and one without.
So we may want to do that here as well.
Yeah, we can set up I can set up a separate sheet, and that information as far as what the project area expansion area is, that will be made available in the RFP as well.
Okay.
Another question here. This is Paul with Senator Wisp again. Going back to the Perry, Juniata, Mifflin County RFP, and I think I heard similar discussion with this one. It will go back to each of the 4 counties for their individual picks, if you will, of ISPs. So there's really no mechanism or incentive to provide cost savings through either, a bid that would be more comprehensive, joining some of these counties, and or back to the ISP to determine whether they want to bid from 1 to 4 of these. I think we had that situation in the last RFP also, where not everybody bid in every county. So any comments on that? Should we look at these as 4 independent, no economy of scale, individual decisions, and not overthink how to present a best case?
Is it fair for me to have a response back to you to say, look at it from both perspectives, or is that really hampering you in terms of how you would approach this and present this back to us?
I think that's a fair response. It's a little challenging because there were some economies of scale evident last time that couldn't really be brought to bear to help the situation, but we can look at it both ways, certainly.
Looks like Chris Miller had a question.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I had some questions, I guess, regarding some of the other fundings that have been out there and what kind of impact they're going to have, such as RDOF, the CARES Act, all that stuff that's being funded. I mean, that all has to come back into the calculations of ROI on any of these projects. So how does that, what impact is that having on this project from your standpoint?
You're talking about the FCC just released the awards, correct?
Yes, the FCC, and then Drive having their CARES Act network that's being built out currently. How does all this play into this project?
Yeah, I can address the CARES Act hopefully a little bit more definitively than the FCC, but the CARES Act, we're coordinating, and obviously the counties that we're talking about that potentially has some CARES funds in is Northumberland and Union County, and we've had conversations with both commissioners, and they're pretty clear that they believe that the Drive activity will not be touching upon the activity that we're talking about today. In respects to the FCC, I don't have any clear answers at this point in time. We didn't really see this necessarily coming as quickly as it did. And so we're just going to have to navigate that as we proceed and make sure, to the extent that we can, that it's being appropriately coordinated and we're not running into problems down the road a piece. So I don't have any magical answers other than the fact that we're aware of it now, and we need to figure out how we're going to navigate through it. My answer to the CARES and DRIVE, is that consistent, or do you believe that there is some duplication and overlap, Chris or others?
I don't have any specific knowledge as far as the overlap. I mean, I know they're deploying an LTE technology, and I know that Windstream was one of the RDOF winners, so I don't know how that affects our particular area with this stuff. So, obviously wireless, it doesn't stop at county borders or anything like that. So there's always, being able to cherry pick certain places where you have line of sight or certain requirements that work as far as wireless goes with what Drive is doing. And then the other situations as far as wireline and some of these places that already have stuff to some extent or another. I'm just curious, if we're going to be spending money on locations that are getting funding from multiple places. So while there may be one specific winner for this project, there's another winner from the USDA's funding or from the RDOF funding or something like that that's building out the same area in a similar time frame. That obviously that's business decisions that people need to make, but that's something that I think the awarding aspect of it needs to consider that in terms of all the funding and all the liability that a company is going to take on to do something like this. It's prudent to think about all that from both the vendor or the award winner and the award grantor.
Yeah, and these are all very good points. And there really needs to be some level of gatekeeping of these funds so that they can be better distributed in areas that need the broadband incentives and not duplication of dollars. I absolutely 100% agree with that. To the best of my knowledge, there is not that level of gatekeeping going on. Although I can tell you this, that at the state level in the last week, there has been some discussion as to how that can be better managed. And there's going to be in the next couple of weeks to have that conversation, and we will probably be at that table to have that conversation with the folks at the state. So it is a concern. I understand it. But I don't have today really good answers other than to say that we're going to try to manage it as we proceed down the process. We don't have a playbook that we can refer to. We're going to make the playbook up as we go. We want to make sure that you guys are having a clear understanding of what our expectations are, and then you, from a perspective of a business person, need to make the decision as it relates to the risk that's associated with you moving into an area, just like you would in any other case too. I mean, it's a competitive environment out there. We get that.
Is there any other questions? Hearing none, I'd like to thank everyone for participating in this meeting. Again, we will make sure that the recorded meeting will be made available on the website, as well as any additions or updates to the RFP until we get a final one. Again, we're looking at the end of the year to hopefully have a final RFP published and out on the street. Mike, do you have anything?
I do not. Thank you for your time. Great input. Let's see where this journey takes us, and we'll try to figure it out and do the best that we possibly can. But we did very similar in the pilot program in the other 3 counties that we talked about. And now we have actual build out happening down there as well. So I hope everybody a great Christmas and a safe holiday. And thanks for your input. Looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thanks.